Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, following this truth from honor to rule well. Peace and salutation to the 144,000, the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude. Unto you I say shalom. Coming to you back with another lesson through the Spirit. And I'm entitled this one, Esau, Edom will not rule forever. And who is Esau, Edom? Speaking about in the scriptures is going into today, the so-called white man, which he put that title on himself because nobody in the world gave him that title of white, because he put that title on him to hide from his true identity, which is the descendants of Esau, which is the twin brother of Jacob, which was also given a blessing by Isaac to rule the planet Earth for a short period of time. But it's only for a short period of time. It's not forever, because you got these Edomites that are trying to offset prophecy by getting that birthright on the left-hand side, trying to gain immortality through transhumanism and AI and all these different technological means, which we know is going to fail, but they're still going to attempt to get that left-hand blessing. But we know that ultimately Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is going to throw that monkey wrench, like it says in I think Job chapter 23, when he's about to fill his belly. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is going to rain that great wrath on him. So he is going to get his NWO, system up and running, have everybody micro C hipped up, and even now, he has complete rulership of the entire earth, but he's trying to take it up to another notch. But Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is going to let this devil, which that word devil means deceiver, which ultimately describes the white man, because he's deceived all these different nations by proclaiming that they're the true people of the Bible. Pushing all these lies, all these different false ideologies, pseudoscience, and ultimately the world is starting to wake up to who the true problem of the entire earth is, which is the so-called white man. So people are fed up with this man ruling, like it says in Proverbs 29 and verse 2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn, and the whole world is mourning. People are fed up with this white man ruling the planet Earth. So ultimately, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is going to have to put a stop to this devil very soon. Unlike, especially our people, the Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, that actually want, Esau, Edom to rule forever, because then it will let them to continue to do their iniquity. But we know what this devil is about to come down with. He's about to come down with that great wrath. He's about to come down with that martial law, the mass implementation of the MOTB. So ultimately, all these lives that Jake is used to living, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, which are the true Israelites, especially here in America, that's about to be done away with. Because if you was to let Jake work a 9 to 5, go to college and go to the club on the weekend, he would be happy with that. But that's not what Esau, Edom has in store. Esau, Edom has a whole different plan, which is to enslave humanity, put these micro C hips inside, the entire world, which we know that he's not gonna, accomplish that. He's only gonna micro C hip up so many people, and then Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is gonna have to put a stop to it and bring this devil down and deliver his elect. All right, this is Job chapter 14 and verse 5. Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. So ultimately, the days of this devil ruling upon the planet Earth, they're numbered. You know, Yahweh Shemel Shai has set that limit to where this devil can't pass. You know, you already had this devil try to explore the galaxies and space. You know, he so-called made it to the moon, but we know that that's all bullshit. We know that this devil hasn't been past the Van Allen belt, and it's going to be the same thing when he tries to make himself to be the Most High. He's ultimately going to fail. This is Psalms chapter 49 and verse 11. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own name. So who calls the lands after their own names? You know, America, Africa, and all these different lands throughout the four corners of the earth. The so-called white man, because he has complete rulership of the entire earth, because he was given that temporary blessing by Yahweh Bashmiel Shai, you know, which ultimately was Isaac, you know, who gave him that temporary blessing, but it's only temporary. You know, and then now it's to the point that these Edomites, they have that belief that, oh shit, you know, the Heavenly Father hasn't judged us. You know, he's letting us do our wickedness. He's letting us do our NWO plan and get it up and running. But ultimately, it's the Lord's will. You know, it's not that these devils are going to continue to rule forever, because clearly their kingdom is falling. You know, especially here in America, Babylon the Great. This shit is collapsing, and it's collapsing quick, because Yahweh Bashmiel Shai is about done using this devil to cause chaos around the planet Earth. And very soon he's going to bring them down. He's going to put them in chains, and he's going to bring that righteous rulership up, which is the nation of Israel, starting with Yahweh Shai, the 12, the 144,000, the rest of the 1/3. This is Job chapter 9 and verse 24. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? So who has complete rulership of the entire earth? The wicked. And who are the wicked? You know, the third part of man. You have the three classifications, which the first is the sons of God, which today would be the Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and also the Israelite foreigners that have been scattered abroad, but their lineage goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then you have the sons of men, which are these other heathen nations, you know, the so-called Chinese, so-called Arabians, you know, so-called East Indians. Those are the sons of men. Then you got the third classification, which is the sons of the wicked, the sons of Satan, you know, the spiritual, the physical counterpart of the spiritual demon Satan, which are the Edomites, you know, the so-called white people. This is how you know that they have complete rulership of the entire earth, because they've gone out throughout the four corners of the earth, you know, painted the images of the Heavenly Father and the only begotten Son and the angels, you know, so-called white skin, you know, pale skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. And this is how they fooled the entire earth to make the world believe that they're the true people of the Lord. But we know that that's bullshit. It was all a lie. It was all false. And now the whole world is starting to wake up to the fact that these aren't the true people of the Lord, especially the people over there in the Holy Land, over there in the land of Israel. You know, everybody's starting to wake up to the fact that they're frauds. You know, and it's to the point where people are starting to blame everything on these people. So clearly his kingdom is collapsing, because now the wicked, the ones who rule the entire earth is being revealed. This is Psalm 73 and verse 1. Truly the Most High is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. Verse 2, but as for me, my feet were almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped, for I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. So that's how we were, you know, before we came to this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. You know, we were envious, you know, at these so-called white people, and even at these celebrities, you know, that look like they're winning. They have these millions, they have all the fame. They don't have to worry about, paying their bills and all this other bullshit. But ultimately, what we didn't know is what their end is, which is damnation and destruction. A lot of them are going to be taken by those missiles. They're going to be taken during famine, and especially these wicked elite, the Rothschilds and Rockefellers. They're going to be taken by, by going to be the first fruits of slavery. Verse 4, for there are no bands in their death, but their strength is firm. And that's right. A lot of these Edomites, especially the wicked elite, the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, they live up to, be 100+ years old. And you're like, damn. Then you have Jake on the other hand. Jake be dying in his 50s, 60s out of a heart attack. Ultimately because we're under the curses. And all these heathens, they're starting to have the curses put upon them. But ultimately, the ones who really have those curses is the nation of Israel. So that's why you see all these heathens winning. They be living up to 100 years. They be eating pork and shrimp, crab, lobster, and nothing happens to them. But then Jake eats that shit, he gets his limbs amputated. Verse 5, they are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. And they don't have to worry about shit, especially these wicked elite. They don't have to worry about paying, their income tax and bills, and worry about if they're going to have enough for rent, and worry about their kids and sending them off to college. No, they're chilling, because they have complete rulership of the entire earth. So they don't really have to worry like the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans constantly have to worry. They don't have to worry about, leaving their house unattended and locking all the doors and having guns everywhere because of burglars. These Edomites, especially in these gated communities, they leave their door open. Ain't nobody gonna break in. They're not worried about getting pulled over by the police and, praying that, you don't get blasted. Verse 6, therefore pride compasses them about as a chain. Violence covers them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than the heart could wish. And that's right. That's why they have that mindset that they think they're going to rule forever. They're like, oh, shit. Look at all these riches, all these possessions we got. The Most High must be dealing with us in the sense that, he's with us. And ultimately, we know that he's not. He's hardening their heart so that fall can be greater. They're going to fall from that high and lofty position because ultimately, Yahweh Shema Shai hates pride. And it's to the point where these Edomites, the pride has blinded them so much that they think that, they could be like the Most High. Like it said, Obadiah chapter 1. Verse 8, they are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. And that's right. All these Edomites with the smooth talk, but really words are in their heart, like it says in Psalms 55. Their words are smoother than butter. Ultimately, their true plans is to enslave the whole world under that NWO, having everybody micro C hipped up with the MOTB. Verse 9, they set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walketh through the earth. Yeah, they blaspheme Yahweh Shema Shai, saying that we don't need a God no more. We could be our own God. We can make our own reign. We don't need Yahweh Shema Shai. That's what these damn devils say. Claiming that we could be our own creators. We could do build our own future. But we know that that's bullshit. That's Yahweh Shema Shai put in that spirit of deception, of dissolution on these devils. And jump down to verse 12. Behold, these are the ungodly who prosper in the world. They increase in riches. And yeah, these damn Edomites, they're ungodly as all hell. You got these American Christians proclaiming that they, love the Most High, that they love the Bible, but they don't really read the Bible. If they really knew what the Bible speaks of and what it consists of, then they would be sorrowful, because ultimately the Bible, it explains what's going to happen to these so-called white people, to these Edomites, which is going to be a thousand hardcore year slavery, which could feel like eternity for these devils that help build a kingdom up. Then eventually they're going to be done away with. Like it said in Obadiah chapter 1 and verse 18. They're going to be thrown in that pit, and they're going to be burnt up. Burnt to a crisp, never to be seen ever again. There shall never be root nor branch. So at that time, appointed period, the Edomites are going to be done away with completely. Verse 17, until I went into the sanctuary of the Most High, then understood I therein. And that's right. Once we came into this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of Yahweh Bashmiel Shai, the 100% truth, now we understand what the end of this devil is. We know that his kingdom is fallen, and it is not forever. We know that he's going to be put down, and he's going to be put in chains. We know that ultimately he's going to be done away with completely, and that gives us comfort. Unlike the whole world that don't know that this devil is about to be taken out of power, they're still mourning and bugging out. Verse 18, surely thou didst set them in slippery places, thou cast them down to destruction. And that's what's going to happen to these devils. For all their pride, all the abominations that they do on a daily basis, Yahweh Bashmiel Shai is going to do away with these devils. Verse 19, how are they brought into desolation as in a moment? They are utterly consumed with terrors. And that's what these Edomites, these heathens, these Babylonians, these Americans have coming. Especially when those missiles hit. They're going to think they're chilling, micro C hipped up. And once they see those missiles coming, that's it. That's the end of America. That's the end of the kingdom of Esau, Edom, and that's the start of the kingdom of heaven, starting when the elect get beamed up into the chariots. This is Sirach chapter 10 and verse 4. The power of the earth is in the hand of the Lord, and in due time he will set over it one that is profitable. And that's right. Ultimately, it was the Lord who set these devils up in positions of power. But we know that it's not forever. We know that it's only for a short period of time. And that short period of time is almost up. And very soon he's going to bring this devil down and set the one that is profitable, which is the nation of Israel. Because this devil isn't even profitable to his own people. He's only profitable to that 1%, the wicked elites, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. To everybody else, he's greedy as all hell. Jump down to verse 8. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and rich got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another, and that's what's going to happen. Because these devils have gotten all these riches throughout the four corners of the earth, especially here in the Americas, through robbing, raping, murdering, pillaging the entire earth, going throughout the four corners of the earth and going to these different countries and taking their resources. And they decline, and he comes down with that sword, with the military, with the army. So this is how this devil has gotten rich, and it's to the point where all these nations are fed up with this devil. He's just a complete devil, just taking all these resources from these different people, bombing and destroying. So everybody's fed up. If the people are fed up with this devil, how much more Yahweh Bashmiel Shai? So ultimately, we're at that point where this devil's kingdom is collapsing, is crumbling, is circling the drain very quickly. So it is evident that this devil time of ruling upon the planet Earth is coming to an end very soon, and that's good news for the elect. But for the rest of these heathens, these other nations, these Edomites, these 2/3 Jakes, that's bad news for them. But it's good news for the hopeful elect, because then we know that the kingdom of heaven is nigh and their salvation is nigh. Lord willing, we be a part of that number. But that's pretty much the point. I pray this is edifying to the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, following this truth from how to do well. Peace and salutation to the 144,000, the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude. Unto you I say shalom.